this week, Parashat Re'eh, we talked about this incredible two Psukim that we find in this week's Parasha, the great mission statement of Am Yisrael, Banim atem laHashem elokiכם, you're the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Am kadosh ata, you're a holy nation, Am Sgula, you have a special mission for this world. Interestingly, the Torah links this to a very, very seemingly random commandment.
Yeah, not what we would expect. A small mitzvah talking about not scratching your hand and not shaving your hair as part of mourning after someone you lost. Really strange why that would be linked to the message of being the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Exactly. This great mission statement linked to this very seemingly random mitzvah. We try to understand what is this mitzvah really about. There's so much depth to it, especially once you start to understand even the Hebrew language of these words, what's going on over here, because there's so much more to these commandments than what meets the eye. You really want to take a look. Hope you enjoy it. So this week, Parashat Re'eh, there's so many mitzvahs to discuss in this week's parasha, but I want to focus on two psukim that in them have one of the greatest statements in the Torah, one of the biggest statements by Moshe Rabbeinu to Am Yisrael, telling us what our mission in this world is. The psukim where Moshe says, "Banim atem laHashem elokiכם," you are the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Am kadosh ata, you are a holy nation, and you were chosen, Becha bachar, to be an Am Sgula, to be a special nation, to carry out this special mission for the world. And when I tell you that these great statements, these great mission statements are actually connected to a very specific mitzvah in the Psukim, when you look in the Psukim, and I ask you, what kind of mitzvah do you think these statements are connected to? You'd probably say, I don't know, maybe a bris milah, or maybe Shabbos, maybe tefillin like we discussed last week. These big mitzvahs that are always associated with Judaism, with righteousness, with being a good Jew that follows the way of Hashem. But actually, when you take a look inside the Psukim, that's not even close. Because when you look at the pasuk, the mitzvah that Moshe links to these statements is the mitzvah of not shaving off your head and not pulling out hairs as part of a mourning process over someone who was nifter, somebody who died, and not scratching yourself as part of that process too, not making a permanent scratch in your body. These two mitzvahs of lo tikrchu kolcha, lo titgodedu, these two very random mitzvahs probably would have been on the bottom of that list of me asking you to name the mitzvahs that are chosen as part of this great statement of being the chosen nation, being the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we really have to understand, why are these mitzvahs the ones that are linked to these great statements, to these two big psukim, to this mission statement of Am Yisrael? What is really going on in these two mitzvahs? What are these commandments of not pulling out hair, not shaving hair, and not scratching, deep scratches, not engraving in your body these sritot, these scratches? What are they really about? Why are they linked to these great mission statements of Am Yisrael?
Yeah, that's definitely a surprising link. I think to understand this, we have to really try to understand what these mitzvahs are about. And when we look at them, we have two. They both seem to be linked to the process of mourning, but one is physically scratching your body, leaving a mark on your body. And the other one doesn't seem as severe. It's shaving off your hair. I mean, the hair will grow back at some point. But these two are brought here together. And when we try to see, it's Dvarim, most things appeared earlier. So let's look where they appear. So we do see this concept of scratching yourself show up in Parshat Kedoshim, where it talks also about tattoos and about scratching yourself for a nefesh, probably with the same meaning for someone who passed away. But actually, this concept of korcha, we do see it show up, but it shows up about the Kohanim. When we talk about the Kohanim, that they're not allowed to become impure just in some specific situations, but usually they're not supposed to become impure by coming and touching the dead. It also mentions this idea of the other things that are done around mourning that the Kohanim are not allowed to do. So I think there are two things here that come together. First of all, there's that basic idea, and maybe that's expressed in Banim atem laHashem elokiכם. You aren't your own thing. It's your body is your body, but at the end of the day, it's a holy body. Ki am kadosh ata laHashem elokecha. There's this basic aspect, and Rashi points out, as we see, ki am kadosh ata uvecha vachar. There's another step. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the basic step, as Rashi says, is you're born that way. It's from your forefathers. And therefore, the way you treat your body is not, it's my body, I do whatever I want. So that's why we have some halachot related to that. But actually, we don't see all those halachot here. Here, we only see the ones tied to the mourning aspect, which means there's something here about the mourning, about the way we treat death, that's critical to what the Torah is trying to teach us here. And I think the answer to this lies in another question. If back there, this concept of korcha was tied only to the Kohanim, why suddenly now is Moshe teaching teaching it to all of us. Why does the Kohen have these mitzvot? And we said it comes together with the mitzvot of him not becoming impure. And I think on a basic level, this has to do with what the Kohen's role is. He represents something. The Kohen, as Chazal say, is both our shaliach to the Mikdash, but he's also God's shaliach in this world. When we come to see to the place of God, we see the Kohanim. This is the face which we see. This is how we meet godliness in this world, is through the work they're doing in the Mikdash. And therefore, because they represent something, and they represent Elohim Chaim, the God of life that brings life into this world, too much focus on death, too much focus on end, on finite, is the opposite of seeing godliness in this world, of seeing the Ein Sof of godliness in this world, the eternity. And therefore, for someone who represents God in this world, he should stay away from death as much as possible. Stay away from over mourning that death. And maybe that's also why he shouldn't do all these things. He shouldn't korcha lamet, these marks that are symbolizing, this is the end of the world. This is, I'm going to scratch my hand. I'm going to shave off my hair. I'm going to leave marks on my body because of this loss. So just as he doesn't come close to the dead, he also doesn't have these expressions that show that death is the end of the world. But then, if this is something for Kohanim, then why does it suddenly show up here for all of us? And why here in Dvarim? But I think that's exactly the point. The Torah says the following words, as we pointed out, Rashi shows us that there are two levels here. Ki am kadosh ata la'Hashem elokecha, uvecha bachar. There are two parts. You were chosen, and you're a holy nation. Now, we would think that those are the same thing. They would actually be flipped around. You're chosen, and therefore you're the holy nation. No. These are two levels. You're a holy nation. That's part of who you are. That's built into who you are. And that's why we said there's those basic things of you don't damage your physical self. But there's more than that. There's your role in this world. Uvecha bachar Hashem. Hashem chose you from all the nations to be an am sgula. And we know these words. We know a very similar pasuk back in Yitro, just before we get the Torah. We are told what our mission in this world will be. And it will be to be an am sgula. And what's the next pasuk? V'atem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim. You're going to be Kohanim. Wait a minute. Maybe that's what the Torah is teaching us here. Why is the Kohen not allowed to come too close to the death? Because of his mission in this world, because he represents godliness in this world. Until now, you were in the desert. You weren't surrounded by other nations. But when you go into Israel, when you continue on your mission, you too will be Kohanim. You will be a Kohanim nation in this world. You're chosen to represent godliness in this world. Not to just do your thing off in the desert. The opposite. To influence the world. To be a messenger to bring godliness into this world. And therefore, you represent something. And therefore, at some level, you have that aspect of the Kohanim. Not only should you not damage yourself physically permanently because your body is holy and it's a present and you're the son of God, but it's more than that. You shouldn't even damage yourself temporarily when that's around over connecting to death and over exaggerating the impact of death. You have to have that separation. You represent something. Don't sink into that avelut, into that mourning too much because of who you are. Because although this was something for Kohanim, you too are a Kohen. You too are a Kohen to the world, and you need to bring that godliness into the world. You represent godliness. You represent the Elohim Chaim in this world.
Very good, very good. Just like you're saying, most of the Rishonim over here, when they talk about this commandment, this isur of over-exaggerating on a death by shaving off the hair and by scratching permanent marks into the body, they all talk about this aspect of where it's very natural to mourn. It's okay to cry about the death of a person. It's okay to mourn, but you have to know to put that limit, not to mourn exaggerated, not to go over those lines. Many of the Rishonim discuss that. The Chinuch, the Ramban, the Rambam, all talk about these aspects because just like you're saying, in the end of the day, we are here in this world on a mission, and we have a mission, and when that mission is done, the mission is done. That's it. There's nothing more to do. And on the other hand, this world is only part of that mission. This is the basis. This is one of the foundations of our belief, of our emunah, of what we believe in. Understanding that your life doesn't freeze after you encounter a death. We mourn the loss. We care about the loss, but we continue building. We continue living that life of the death. After that too, life doesn't freeze over there. And talking about this concept of freezing, very interestingly, this word in Hebrew of lo tikrechu kolcha, you shouldn't make a boldness. You shouldn't take out hair. In Hebrew, the same letters of kolcha, kuf, reish, chet, is also freezing, is also ice, is kerach, as we know from Yaakov Avinu in Sefer Bereshit, where he describes the freezing cold nights with kerach. Kerach is also when the water gets to its limit and then it freezes over. It goes over its limit. And as we know, water is mayim chaim, water is life, and we don't do do ice. Lo korchim korcha. We don't turn the water into ice. We don't freeze it. We continue the life. We continue moving on with life. Again, it's okay to mourn. You should mourn. It's a normal psychological process to go through. It's an important process to go through, but there is the limits to that. The limits that you have to know how to put in order to continue living, to make sure that the water, Mayim Chaim, continues to flow and doesn't freeze and doesn't become kerach. That's lo tikruchu kolcha. And you know, very interestingly, also the Rambam, when he brings down Isur of lo titgodedu, the second part of the pasuk, so the Gemara explains lo titgodedu gdida is srita, is scratching. And this is what the Rishonim talk about. You're not allowed to scratch. However, the Gemara also learns out of this pasuk, lo titgodedu, not to do a scratch, something totally different. Lo titgodedu gdida, gimel dalet dalet, this root, they use this concept of lo titgodedu in order to learn the Isur, that it is forbidden to make groups of people. That when you have one city, you shouldn't have many different batei din, each for a different group. You should stick together. That when you have a shul, you should have one minyan in it and not many different groups, so that it shouldn't look like we have different gods, we have different Torahs, and also that it shouldn't drive a machloket, a disagreement, a dispute that splits off communities. This is what the Gemara learns also from this Isur of lo titgodedu, and the Rambam brings it down to in this Isur. Lo titgodedu, A is you're not allowed to scratch, but lo titgodedu, B is you shouldn't have a machloket. And this is where it gets even more interesting, because the Rambam then says this is the drash, this is not the pshat, this is not on the simple level, but this is on the deeper level of the Torah, of the pasuk, teaching us this commandment of not having a machloket, a disagreement that splits up communities. But then the Rambam continues on to bring another example for a commandment that is forbidden, but is not on the simple level of the pshat level of the pasuk, but rather on a deeper level. And he brings the commandment of lo yu kekoach v'kadato. You shouldn't be like Korach and his Ada. It's an isur. It is forbidden to make a disagreement and split off from a community in order to make different groups inside him. It says the Rambam, the same thing over there. Lo kekoach v'kadato. On the pshat level, on the simple level, it's not a commandment. It's not a lav. However, in the drash level, it is the lav. It is forbidden to make machloket from that limud over there, from that lesson over there. And thinking about this for a second, this is why it's so important to learn the Torah in Hebrew, because this isur of lo tikrechu korcha, this concept of korcha, kereach, kuf resh chet, you got it, is exactly just like korach. Maybe on the deeper level, this is what the Torah is telling us over here. Lo tikrechu korcha, A is about boldness, about taking out hair, but lo tikrechu korcha on a deeper level is not being like korach, is creating these groups, which is again continuation. Lo titgodedu. Lo titgodedu, A is you shouldn't scratch, but then lo titgodedu, B, like the Rambam and the others say, is not creating groups and groups within Am Yisrael. Maybe this is what this pasuk is telling us on the deeper level of being careful from machloket, being careful from a disagreement. Like we've said many times in the past, we are built on a good machloket. We like to disagree. We like to argue. This is the way the Talmud is built. It's okay as long as you understand that we are one nation. You know, like what? Like one family. And you know what it's called? Banim atem laHashem elokiכם. Maybe this is what this pasuk is telling us over here. You are the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are one nation. You are the Am Sgula. Maybe this is what Rashi is pointing out. You were born with it. You can't disconnect from it. You're all one nation. Just like Yaakov's sons, when they came to Mitzrayim, said to Yosef, Bnei ish echad anachnu. We are brothers. We are one family. We are not separated individuals. We're not split. We are one unit together. Maybe this is what this pasuk is teaching us on the deeper level. This is why this commandment of lo tikrechu korcha, lo titgodedu, go together with these huge statements of banim atem laHashem elokiכם vebecha bachar להיות am sgula. This is what it means to be the Jewish nation. Is that on the one hand, we are built, we thrive on disagreements, we are built on arguments, we love to argue. On the other hand, we understand that we are one nation and we are in it together. We are here for each other. Banim atem laHashem elokiכם. And maybe even just like the Gemara learns from this pasuk, that banim atem laHashem elokiכם, so much so you are Kadosh Baruch Hu's sons, that no matter what you do, and the Gemara goes through a list of different bad things Am Yisrael could do, still, banim atem laHashem elokiכם, you will always be the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what it means to be part of our nation. Maybe we might argue a lot, we might fight a lot, but we have to know how to put a limit to that too, to stop that too, and to say, this is a good argument. From this point onwards, it becomes a bad argument, like we've discussed deeply so many times, specifically in Parashat Korach over there with Datan and Aviram. When hatred is leading the arguments, that's when it becomes a bad argument. That may be what it means, lo tiyu kekoach va'adato. Remember that you're one nation. Remember that you are all banim atem laHashem elokiכם.
That's very interesting, especially because it starts with plural. Banim banim atem laHashem elokichem, and it ends ki am kadosh ata. Meaning part of your ability to come together is recognizing that in plural, that you too are, not only I'm the son of God, so are you, and so are you, and so are you. And therefore, banim atem laHashem elokichem, then we can come together. If we're able to recognize that each one, we're all banim laHashem elokichem, then we can come together as ki am kadosh ata. But I think these two, this Shat and Drash, aren't really separating. They can actually come together. Because if we represent godliness in this world, as we said, like the Kohanim in the Mikdash, imagine we would come to the Mikdash and we would want to bring a korban, but there would be different groups of Kohanim. These Kohanim are doing one thing, these Kohanim are doing another thing. We would exactly get that image of there being many gods. Lotit Godedu, we can't be Kohanim to the world if we're each doing our own thing. If we don't represent the oneness of God in this world, one of the most important things we believe in is the oneness of God. Therefore, our oneness, as Chazal also teach us, is deeply connected to the oneness of God. If we can come together, all children of the same Father, come together, then we can really fulfill our role of being the Kohanim to the world, of really representing godliness in this world.
Exactly. Representing godliness in the world and bringing the world to a better place, to a good place. Again, like we keep on saying so many times, there's so much more to talk about this concept. And we talked about this so many times in the past. But again, it's super important, super relevant for us today. But we'll end here. We're out of time. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it around. Comment on YouTube. Let us know if you liked it or you didn't like it. Like the video if you did. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and help us grow the channel. And Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom.
Shkoyach to you, Shabbat Shalom. And we'll talk again next week.